Welcome everyone. I am Councillor Claire Udy, Chair of the Licensing Committee. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distance measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. This has included a request for all attendees to have taken an LFT test within 48 hours within this meeting, the use of the NHS Track and Trace app or attendee log, 2 metres social distancing, the wearing of masks when not seated, and a one-way system in the Guildhall. Public seating has been made available, however, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Can I please ask members to remain seated at 2 metres throughout the duration of this meeting and wear a face covering unless seated? Just before I go into deputation, I'm just going to do housekeeping. If continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Please do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall's fire marshal regulations, anyone who is signed at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting or records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use their microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. It's not like full council where I beep you in, like you'll just turn it on and you'll speak here today. Thank you. I'm going to go into introductions before we go straight into deputations. This is going to be a mess, quite frankly, so I'm going to ask you in each kind of row around to the back row and round. So I'll start here, please, and I'll do you two last, if that's all right. So, hello.
Hi, I'm Kevin McKee. I'm the parking manager at Portsmouth City Council.
Councillor Charlotte Gerarda, Central Southsea.
Councillor Tom Coles, Fratton. Oh, just once. Okay, sorry. My name is Miguel Coltia, and I'm making today a deputation on behalf of the private hire trade.
Councillor Lee Mason, Gosham Ward.
Councillor Scott Pater, Harris Hilsey Ward.
Nikki Humphreys, Licensing Manager.
Hayley Trower, Air Quality Improvement Manager.
Councillor Weems, Hilsey Ward.
Dave Ashmore, a councillor.
Councillor Stuart Brown, Fratton Ward.
Councillor Ian Holder, St Thomas Ward.
Councillor Madrick, Paulsgrove Ward.
Pam Turton, Assistant Director Transport at Portsmouth City Council.
Bruce Hall, General Manager, Aquacars.
Peter Sutherland, Uber driver, making a deputation.
Viv Young, Taxi Trade, no deputation being made, thank you.
Councillor Robert New, Copner Ward.
Councillor Kimberly Barrett, Milton Ward.
Hayley Chivers, Strategic Transport Lead.
Felicity Tippery, Transport Planning Manager.
Good afternoon, my name's Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the council and I'll be advising the committee today. Thank you.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Good afternoon, my name is Thomas Bodolay. I'm an Uber driver and making a deputation.
Good afternoon, my name is Alex Ungurano. I'm the owner of Airport Expert Portsmouth. I'm going to be making the deputation as well.
Thank you. We'll go straight into deputations today. On item number 5, we have Mr. Peter Sutherland. Just on the fact that apparently on standing orders there are like a group time limit. I'm quite happy for it to be a bit more chilled out in here. As long as you're not repeating the same points over and over again, then just take as long as you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Item 5 is regarding the bus lanes. I made a proposal to the licensing consultative group back in 2019, October I think it was, that private hire vehicles have access to bus lanes. I argued at the time that there were 4 times as many private hires as hackneys, thus logically carry 4 times as many fare-paying members of the public. My proposal was unanimously agreed at the consultative group meeting, and it was to be put forward to the licensing committee. Well, here we are 2 years later, thanks to COVID, and I thank Councillor Scott Peter Harris for formally proposing the matter. Since my original proposal, we've seen the introduction of CAS, which frankly adds weight to my argument to somehow reduce the volume of static air polluting traffic from key areas around the city, notably Market Way, M25, etc. M275. God knows the M25 is bad enough. This proposal has the total support of the private hire trade and, I believe, the hackney trade. But I have some reservations about the length of the trial, the method of data collection, and some of the public comments that have been made about the trial. I note that Councillor Stagg has said that the trial will be a minimum of 3 months, and I do hope that it can be pushed out a little bit further, perhaps to 6 months. I also note a comment in the newspaper from some apparently scared and unidentified individual from Portsmouth Cycle Forum that, and I quote, "It is hard to understand why the council wants to progress this proposal other than the suggestion that it's to placate drivers now hit by CAS." Well, please note, Portsmouth Cycle Forum, that bus lanes run through CAS areas, and that we argued for potential reduction of air pollution in key areas and the potentially removing up to 800 vehicles from queues, and we see that as a benefit to the city. Now, I also have concerns that the licensing manager said in the report before the committee, I quote, "In order to obtain a clearly distinguished private hire vehicle from privately owned vehicles, a key consideration will be the use of council delivery on vehicles using bus lanes, which is the case with licensed hackney carriage vehicles." Now, I find this statement both confusing and misleading, as must the committee, because unless the traffic management system has been dramatically overhauled in the past 6 weeks, as far as I'm aware, the only identifying mark of any nature is the vehicle registration number. I actually submitted a FOI request to Portsmouth City Council back in October, which I have with me, which confirms exactly what I'm saying. So it's not PCC livery, it's not lights on top of hackneys, it's not fixed operator livery, it's not windscreen stickers, it's not sides window stickers, not even bells, holly and mistletoe. The bus lanes are monitored by, as far as I'm aware, an ANPR cameras which check a vehicle registration number against a pre-approved database known as the whitelist. I would be deeply concerned if any committee member, having read the licensing manager report, thought for one moment that the council delivery on vehicles, licensed vehicles, had any role to play in the vehicle recognition in bus lanes, unless, as I've said, the system has been overhauled in the last 6 weeks since the FOI request. To believe that will be totally misleading. Other than that, councillors, I fully support the proposal for a trial allowing access to bus lanes for private hire vehicles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr Sutherland. Councillor Hockaday, you've joined us where you are. Could you just introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry for being late, Chair. Councillor Hockaday for Cosham.
No. Just to ask, any declarations of interest from councillors as well? We didn't do that, but I don't have any. No. Cool. Okay, thank you. Next, on item number 6. 6 is quite packed with a lot of policy in it. I know that we have quite a lot of deputation. We have one from Mr Bruce Hall. I did have it written down, but you're here, so I guess you're going to read. Can you just outline, is it just generally about different parts of the policy, or is it any specific part of it?
No, you've got my deputation, which I've sent through to everybody.
Yeah.
The only thing I would like to add to it is, although I agree with Peter about the bus lanes, I've been fighting for bus lanes for private hire for well over 20 years. I've got that knocked back for several reasons. The thing that I disagree with Peter is the livery on vehicles, because the perception of the public would think that normal cars would be able to go into bus lanes. Now, we either have it or we don't. If we have to stick to the rules and have a livery on them so people know they are private hire or taxis, then so be it. You can't have everything your own way. You know, we have to have a policy where Portsmouth City Council dictate to the licensing trade what is going to happen. At the moment, the only cars I know that I run that have got livery on them, I know who they work for, where they are, what signage they got onto them and everything else, is not Portsmouth City Council's. They are Wolverhampton Council's vehicles. Now that should not be it. Portsmouth should be setting a standard above every other council in this country. But I'm sorry to say, we are lagging behind. And because of what is going on in this chamber and what people are saying and everything else, we are bowing to other members and drivers saying, right, this is what we want, give it to me, give it to me. And they're not. You're not setting standards. I have been in this trade nearly 30 years, and this is the lowest I think this trade has been in to date. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Would you like me to read your written deputation for the benefit of members of public at home?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Thank you. So I'm just pretending to be you for a moment. Dear Nikki, in regard to the council meeting being on Thursday the 16th of December 2021 to discuss bus lanes and livery, I've worked for Aquacars for over 20 years and the same contentious issues keep rearing their head. Firstly, bus lanes I sat in front of our learned friends and put the case of private hire to use countless times only to be knocked back by bus companies or the Hackney trade for various reasons. Now with the CAZ coming into place in November, it is timely that the council look at this again, as we all should be looking into what traffic congestion is doing to the planet, and this isn't reason why the PCC has introduced the CAZ. Private hire vehicles should be able to use bus lanes rather than sitting in traffic. The general public should be able to move around the city with far greater fluidity. The licensing committee seem to have to go over the same issues every couple of years to appease the minority of drivers who want their own way, although I understand that the licensing department and licensing committee have a difficult job in trying to appease the trade, but it now appears that drivers are making the policies for the trade. Let's take livery. You do not have to turn back the clock not long ago when you would see all Hackneys with their back door bonnet and top light proudly standing out for all to see, and those who choose to work for a private hire company have had the company livery on their front doors displaying the company logo to licensing specifications. The general public know exactly what car they were boarding, and PCC knew who to contact if there were any issues. The general public was safe. I understand why drivers prefer not to have livery. It is more to do with being able to work for multi-operators and choose what fare give the biggest return than vehicles being damaged under a directive from the Department of Transport. Drivers should not be working more than 12 hours a day. Operators are able to see what hours drivers are working, but now with drivers working for multiple operators, I cannot tell you if they have worked for other companies, which causes Aquacars issues in itself, as we have contracts with PCC involving school contracts as well as the NHS and train companies. It does not sit comfortable with me knowing that drivers would be working God knows how many hours, causing fatigue and the safety of the public. Drivers can now choose what jobs they do or even stack them. This means drivers spending longer looking at multiple apps in their cars whilst choosing what job they wish to do from several operators, which in turn will cause drivers to take their eyes off the road. Now that we have vehicles with no livery roaming around the city, no one knows, even if they are taxi, private or private hire. PCC once ahead of what other licensing regimes were doing by leading the fight in regard to control and safety of the general public, are now sadly way behind licensing authorities who are taking steps to stop the decline not only in safety standards but general standards overall that are slowly destroying our trade. The safety of the general public should be paramount. That's your written deputation. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Go back to my piece of paper. We have two written deputations against, which I'll read out now before we go into the spoken deputations for item number 6. I won't be 2 seconds. We have a deputation against Mr. Tafeo Ahmed. Dear Councillor, I am a Portsmouth licensed private hire driver and I want to strongly object to the proposal of the licensing manager to force taxi and private hire trade to display permanent livery, both council and operators, on our vehicles, and this is due to be discussed at the licensing committee meeting today. We have fought for the right not to have permanent livery for two reasons. Number one, it infringes our rights to work on multiple platforms if we so choose, and in doing so it is a blatant restraint of trade. Prior to being able to remove the livery when not working, such as parking at night, taxis and private hire vehicles all over the city were being vandalised on a regular basis. There were some 30 vehicles damaged last year and it was us who had to pay for it. Number three, there have been no reports of vandalism to taxi or private hire vehicles since we have been able to remove the livery. The licensing manager claims that the magnetic livery rules are being abused by some drivers, and I agree that this may be the case, but in her report to the committee, her statistics show that approximately 3% of all licensed vehicles, showing that 97% are compliant. Our Uber group have tried to work with the licensing manager to help stamp out abuse of the privilege of the magnetic livery. If a driver is reported or caught for not displaying the correct livery whilst working, then they should be punished, not just with a talking to, a warning first time perhaps, and then a short-term suspension if it happens again, then perhaps cancellation of a licence if a driver is a persistent offender. Please do not punish all of us because of the sins of the few. How can a London TfL driver manage something in excess of 80,000 licensed taxis and private hire vehicles with no requirement of livery of any kind, and yet passengers still safely find their vehicles? They are not concerned for public safety. There is a common belief that the licensing manager is trying to appease one particular operator, an operator who fears competition from progressive app-based operators. To do so is blatantly against all competition laws. And the licensing office already makes it difficult enough for new operators to enter the local market. If the committee votes to accept the licensing manager's proposal, then you will be, number one, increasing the likelihood of vandalism to taxi and private hire vehicles, and number two, condoning a blatant restraint of trade. Number three, encouraging a potential breach of the anti-competition laws. Please support your local taxi and private hire trade. Please don't force us to license elsewhere. Thank you. Now we have a written deputation from Andrew Brown, which you are... No, another one for 747. Okay, 747 airport cars. Okay, 747 airport cars is a Portsmouth licensed private hire company specialising in airport transfers. Due to the increase in local business since the lifting of lockdowns, we have looked at setting up a local operation, and I've emailed the head of licensing with a few initial questions regarding the same. I attach part of her reply. Do not see that. Okay. We are in desperate need of more companies operating within the city due to huge shortages of drivers, so an increased presence in getting members of the public the transport they need is very welcome. Having received this very positive result, some considerable investment has been made with iCabby software, and substantial amount of advertising revenue has been set aside. Given that all drivers in Portsmouth are self-employed and do not need to display livery other than PCC, we will be able to utilise all of the current PCC licensed vehicles by getting drivers to download our app onto on their phones. Being fully self-employed means that drivers have the right to work for whoever operator they wish. Fixed operator livery would take away that right and be restrictive to the self-employed person. It could even be construed that the self-employed driver, through having to display fixed livery, becomes an employee of that particular company, very much like if they were made to wear uniform. This could lead to another Uber type situation to ascertain the exact legal position on whether drivers are truly self-employed or employed. From a business point of view, it would be extremely restrictive for us as a company with the amount of investment already given that the head of licensing requires and supports more local taxi companies, would be pretty much directly opposite to her email just some 3 months prior. There is, of course, a saying about following the money and the smart money in order to circumnavigate is in Wolverhampton. I do have a comment from Neil Hyder. Is that for reading as well? Comment here. Before, this is a comment from Mr. Neil Hyder. Before I had magnetic livery, I had lost one window, 2 wing mirrors, a kick door and various takeaways over my car. All of this damage cost time off. Since magnets, no damage whatsoever, so please consider this when deciding whether to ban the magnetic livery, please. I do know lots of drivers are driving without livery, but on the other side is that vandalism is down massively. Thanks, Neil. Thank you for reading that. So we have a group of people who are speaking against item number 6. I've been asked to put some people in order. Would you like to speak first, Mr. Sutherland, and then put the 3 in order after that?
Yes, happy to do so, Chair.
Okay, so I'm starting with Mr. Sutherland then, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for your attention. I need, in the limited time allotted, to address 2 aspects of magnetic livery. These proposals come before you without any consultation with the trade and are strongly opposed by both the Hackney and private hire trades in general. Firstly, the point of magnetic council livery. Now, I don't intend repeating the history of this, but we, as the drivers, fought for the right to magnetic council livery for several reasons, not least vandalism of vehicles, as you've just heard. Now, I may be wrong, but I don't believe that the 12-month trial has yet fully concluded, and even if it has, I would argue that the data being put before you today is limited and selective at best. When approval was given for the trial of magnetic council livery, I told the licensing department that we would try to work with them to make the trial work. It was in our interest to make it work, and the right and professional thing to do, I felt, as a trade representative. To this end, I must have reported well over 30 potential offenders to enforcement to investigate, some of which have certainly resulted in penalties being issued. Now I find that information that we have supplied in good faith to licensing is being used against us. I would say shame on the licensing department. Yes, there have been offenders. Yes, some of these offenders are repeat offenders, there is no question. But there are over 1,000 licensed vehicles in Portsmouth, and I would suggest that the licensing manager should be submitting data to this committee on, for example, the number of vehicles challenged and inspected by enforcement, the number of warnings given, the number of suspensions issued, the number of licenses revoked. I suggest that this committee needs to be supplied with real-time data on all and any of the vehicle inspections carried out by enforcement officers. In fact, I would further suggest that such information should be in the public domain, such as it is with TfL. Only then can you see a truly accurate picture rather than hearsay or selective or partial statistics. And only then can members of this committee make a valid judgment, in my opinion. Now, I've heard suggestions that the number of offenders, that is, drivers not displaying the proper livery when working, could be as much as between 15 and 20%. I'd like to see evidence of this claim. It's not before this committee, so where is it? However, that in itself still implies that 80 to 85% are complying. And either way, 80+% would be a very good pass mark in an exam. So why is this trial being deemed a failure with that level of compliance during a trial period? I have suggested to enforcement officers on more than one occasion that stiffer punishments be given to offenders, especially repeat offenders. It would eradicate the problem swiftly and cover all the concerns of the licensing manager. We, the trade, all want to see that. A first offence should be a warning or short-term suspension. A second offence, perhaps a longer-term suspension. A third offence, cancellation of a private hire licence and a vehicle licence if the driver is a vehicle proprietor. Don't mess around. Stop pussyfooting around. I urge you to punish the offenders and not the law-abiding majority, which you would do if you revoke this situation. If the licensing officers do not have the power to issue these penalties, then I put it to you that this committee needs to give them the powers. Moving on to permanently affixed operator livery. For many years, the licensing office sought, in the opinion of myself and others, and I choose my words carefully, to deliberately mislead, at best, both drivers and operators, and perhaps this committee, into believing that permanently affixed operator livery was a condition of license. It never was. I and others have first-hand knowledge of this deception, as does at least one significant operator. We argued before this committee over a year ago that the enforcement of any type of permanently affixed operator livery is no more than a blatant restraint of trade. Therefore, it's arguably against the law. A self-employed driver has the right to work with multiple operators, and yet the licensing manager is seeking to deny that right by both enforcing fixed operator livery and then proposing that the same self-employed driver can only work with one operator as a condition of license. Councillors, I have to ask, who does this benefit? Definitely not the driver population, who are struggling financially already and will continue to do so with the present virus situation. Definitely not the small operator, as you've heard, as they will struggle to find drivers. Definitely not the public, which is a big concern to this council, as these restrictions will deny them choice. Definitely not any new operator that wants to enter the local market. Perhaps it only goes to benefit existing operators. I don't know the answer. But if this committee imposes fixed operator livery, you will be forcing drivers to leave in droves and license elsewhere. Make no mistake of that. So I ask, why would this committee enforce these proposals, and who does it really benefit? I thank you for your time and attention. I'll be pleased to answer questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. Next I have Mr. Dyer. Sorry.
It's okay. Is it okay if I use my phone for notes, please?
Of course you can.
Thank you. Hello, councillors. My name is Mihaela Dyer and I'm a private hire Uber driver. I'd like to talk to you today about safety standards and safety for the drivers and for the customers of Uber. There are over 12 things that cover Uber drivers for safety for their passengers and for themselves. So I've got them on my phone to run through that. One of the very first things that women say when they're getting into my cab is, oh, it's nice to have a woman driver. They don't actually need to have a woman driver because there are so many safety standards. The very first thing that they do is when they book a cab, is that they will see a picture of my profile or whoever the Uber driver's profile is, so they'll be able to recognise the driver themselves. Then they have a way to track how the car comes to them, so they can actually watch the car coming to them. They can then check that the number plate is correct, so when the car arrives they have a visual of the person who's picking them up, the car registration number, and it really gives people a lot of security. Then if they are still feeling vulnerable, they're also able to add a PIN number in. So when they get into the cab and they've established, they can then say to me the PIN number that they've got, and I put that in, and then I'm only able to continue the trip once that is put in. So they can't just get into a random cab and be driven off. I have to say that over the last 15 years as a woman at work, it is the safest job that I've had in 15 years. So before this, I worked for Hampshire County Council in a crisis centre, and for 9 years previous to that I was in the NHS. I have been doing this for a very short time, only 3 months, but not had to submit any incident reports, which has been a great freedom for me. There are other things to cover for the thing is that there's also an emergency assistance button, and that is for the passengers and for the drivers. So if the passenger felt under threat or uncomfortable in any way, they're able to press a blue button on their app, which gets them straight through to emergency services, and I also have that option to do that too. there is 24-hour customer support, which they're able to access. Another thing which is really interesting, and I have had a few passengers do this, is they're able to share their trip. So when they get into my cab, they are able then to share the trip and the exact GPS location with a member of their family or friends or whoever else that they feel that they can trust. And I do know that people definitely use that. There's also the two-way rating system, so they can see, that you're a 5-star rated person, how many rating stars you've got and everything, and if there is ever a problem, then Uber will block you straight away while they investigate. So somebody who's had a report or accusation made against them is automatically taken off, so they're not able to work at all. I've said about the Uber profile, the ride check, I've said about the GPS, verify your ride. About the driver limits, we are limited to, I think it's 10 hours actually as an Uber driver to drive. However, the absolute beauty of this job is that you are free to log on and log off whenever you like. If I'm tired, I can go home. If I'm having hot flushes, I can go home. Any other reason, I'm not tied in and I can't be penalised for finishing work. So that is absolutely, that's life-changing to be self-employed with that. The speed limit alerts, I think. So yeah, it's matching the license plate, matching the car make and model, and checking the driver's photo, plus all of the other things that I've said makes it a really safe job for me, and I really do believe that it makes it very safe for customers. I'm happy to answer any questions if people would like to.
Thank you very much, Miss Dyer. Sorry for assuming you were a guy, but you kind of spoke a little bit about unconscious bias. So I just assumed a taxi driver was a guy. That was my own fault there. Thank you. Next is Mr. Bodola. In my... Oh.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, councillors. There's two things I would like to talk about, which is, first of all, the criminal damage that we suffered due to the fixed livery on our cars. Obviously, one of my colleagues already sent an email about that, but I would just like to point out that since we removed the permanent livery from our cars, there have been 0 reports of any cars being damaged. So before the year, there was at least 30 that we know of. One of my colleagues' car has been damaged 3 times in the same spot, and there was no other cars around his car that's been broken into. Obviously, this is either costing our insurance premium to increase, or we will have to pay out from our own pockets, and we lose money because of this, because we can't work, because we have to get our cars fixed. So imposing again, this will put our cars at risk. It's not what we're looking to do. So the other thing I would like to talk about is the effects of coronavirus that had on our trade. Imposing fixed livery that ties us to one single operator will affect ourselves and our families as well, because we are only able to work for one operator. Obviously now at the present time, because we don't have fixed livery, we can choose who we'd like to work to, so we have more options to provide for ourselves and for our families. And yeah, basically that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to everyone that's here today. Dear Chair and committee members, last year I have brought to your attention that permanent signage to vehicles would amount to a cartel practice, where the driver supply is shared between the existing operators. At the time, I gave the benefit of the doubt that you may have been unaware that permanent signage has this effect. It was to our surprise at the time to be told that permanent operator signage was never mandated by the policy, but was rather imposed by the licensing office. The licensing office effectively exceeded their powers and imposed rules that were not mandated by the policy, and so they effectively overrode the will and the decisions of the committee members. They went ahead and now they're all rules, and I have an email here from Mr. Jason Allen dated February 2019, which proves that they actually asked for fixed operator livery when it was not in the policy. Today, the same licensing office recommends that those made-up rules which facilitate a cartel be imposed formally by yourselves, who have the power to change the policy. Dear councillors, please take a close look at the chain of events and ask yourselves, is the public in that much danger from the lack of signage on the vehicles to mandate your formal support of a cartel? And if so, how is it possible that 6 million Londoners are safe from any harm without having any signage on their vehicles? And are the recommendations of your serving officers impartial and of good moral standing? It's been a year now since you were told that permanent signage facilitates a cartel between operators, and so you cannot have the benefit of the doubt once again. Your decision today will be a statement to your constituents about your moral stance on the rule of law. Will you support the law that prohibits corrupt cartel practices, or will you provide a loophole for cartels to avoid the rule of law? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cortea. We have Mr. Angaranu, is that right? Sorry if I got it wrong there.
Yes, that's okay.
Thank you.
So, just a couple of things that I want to underline. First of all, being the fixed operator livery on the vehicle, it's not convenient for me as I run an airport transport executive company. And I find it really hard to find different drivers to use due to the fact that licensing is now imposing people to wear fixed livery. Second of all, being the fact that since we took off the fixed livery on the vehicles, my car wasn't broken into. Now, I had my car broken into 3 times, and I have to tell you, to repair a window on a BMW 7 Series, it's not that cheap. So I would strongly oppose to this, going back to fixed operator livery and take off the magnetic livery on the vehicles. Thanks a lot, councillors.
Thank you for that. I just want to talk to Dem Services briefly. Now that they've given their deputations, are we involving the rest of the meeting? Because I'm kind of thinking about other meetings, but now they've given their deputations, they stand aside at the meeting and everything is now discussed. Reports and councillors. I know that sometimes we used to talk to the trade reps in between different reports, but is that not the case today? I just wanted to go over standing order. Just so I know where I'm at for the rest of the meeting, that was all. Sorry, Ben, to put you on the spot right now.
To be honest, the procedure is entirely a matter for you as to how you feel best able to manage it. I can't see any issue with you. Apologies, I'll speak up a little bit. I was just saying that the procedure is a matter for the chair to regulate as to who speaks when. I am aware in terms of the process and the procedure today that the presenter for item 4 on the agenda needs to be away by a certain time, and that's why it appears first. So just to remind you, Chair, that that matter, and I appreciate that a lot of the deputations have centred on item 6, which is probably the most contentious matter today.
Thank you. Did you have a comment, Councillor Peter Harris, just to help me a little bit, please? Thank you.
No, it's just to reiterate actually what the legal advisor said about item 4 appearing first, because I know that some people have got childcare commitments and the officers that are presenting need to get away.
That's fine. We've only got, we have no one requested down for deputation. Normally, if I had someone down for a deputation, I would let them be involved with the discussion at that point, but because no one has given a deputation, then that would be it. Okay, fine, thank you. We'll move on to today's agenda properly, just do some little things. We did have apologies for absence from Councillor Benedict Swan and Councillor Jason Fazakerley today. We did do declarations of interest. Number 3, very quickly, minutes of the last licensing committee. Just a quick flick through. Page 1 of the minutes, page 2 of the minutes, and page 3 of the minutes. Is there anything of note there, councillors? No? I'm happy to put that forward. Do you have to second it? Yeah, Thank you very much, Councillor Peter Harris. Right then, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is the London Road Taxi Rank Update by Miss Shivers. Hello. Hayley Shivers. Yeah. Strategic Transport, where are you? Sorry. Hello.
Okay.
Looked the wrong way. Hi.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide an update on the progress undertaken to date in bringing forward a taxi rank in London Road North End. Following the proposal brought forward last year for a ranking the existing bus lane north of Laburnum Grove, detailed assessment work has been ongoing, which has included stakeholder engagement, site visits and assessments, engineering designs and safety reviews. As set out in the report, due to issues identified and safety concerns, this location north of Laburnum Grove is not deemed suitable for the proposed rank. It is recognised that this is felt to be an important location for the taxi trade to have a taxi rank, and therefore potential alternative locations are being investigated. The alternative location detailed in the report is the loading bay to the south of Laburnum Grove. Work is currently ongoing to assess the viability of this option. The findings of this site assessment, including business engagement on how the loading bay is currently used, will be presented and discussed with the taxi trade, bus operators and members to inform a final recommendation. If the recommended solution requires a traffic regulation order, a formal decision report will be presented to the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation, and the outcome will be reported to the Licensing Committee for noting of any changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for councillors, hopefully you should know it was on a supplementary document that was released after the agenda was released here today. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to move on to members' questions today. I'd just like to say this is for information only, but we can pass on some not recommendations, but some notes, because clearly it will be going, I would assume, back to it will be going to a TNT cabinet. Is that right? So. If we're in agreement on some things to be written down to be passed on as noted by the licensing. But any questions? I see Councillor Peter Harris has his light on.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to the officers about this because the proposed area of the rank that was originally proposed, as you see from the document, isn't viable from a safety standard because we've got to protect the precious buses from pulling out. And I make no mistake when I say that, because I think the buses get enough of subsidy from the council as it is, so I make no apology for that. What I will say is I don't think the proposed area of the rank is, I think it's too high up from where the centre of North End is, and that's the only concern I have about it. I think the best way to do is go back out to the trade and ask them, because I know that officers have come up with an idea, but I don't think we're really well placed as a licensing committee to tell the trade where they want their taxi ranks, because they have a better idea of it than we do, because they're out there fundamentally driving every day and we're not. So I think what I personally would think we should do is send it back to TNT to say to engage again, because obviously this is not what the trade asked for, and I think we should be trying to do something that actually the trade wants rather than imposing something that they don't, and that can actually help them earn a living.
Councillor Peter Harris, I hate to say this, but I completely agree with you, obviously. I think it's a great shame that we've gone to a lot of work, and people have asked for this for such a long time, and I know that you've done a lot of work into trying to come to some kind of conclusion, but I think that maybe we should be moving it back and trying to engage again and trying our absolute hardest, and maybe being a bit more stern conversations with the bus companies especially as well. Their high subsidy.
Can I just add to that? It's no fault with the officers. I think the officers have tried to come up with a palatable solution to the problem, and I just don't think that solution is going to be welcomed by the trade, and I think it's best to ask them.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Harris. Does any other members have questions or comments at all? No, you do not. Just to go over the next steps, because we're noting, you just wanted to add at the end to reconsult with the trade and maybe consult more with First Buses. And I just feel like I don't want us to start all over again, but this is the only thing that's going to happen, isn't it, realistically? I don't want the trade to go, well, we're not going to have the taxi rank there if they definitely can't have it at the higher end of London Road. Is that still an option if they still can't do it, that we could put a rank there if it's like the very last option? Sorry, it didn't come out.
So in terms of the bus lane location, from a safety point of view, that's deemed unsuitable.
Is that a final say? can it be reconsulted on?
We can do a formal road safety audit and get an independent opinion on that.
I would very much like that, and I'd like to add that to the end of the next steps for it to be moved on to the next tin for as soon as possible, please. It doesn't have to go to Traffic and Transport to have that, surely not.
I think something else to add, Chair, is that it's imperative that there is a taxi rank in North End, because I think that is something that North End needs as well as not only the trades, but both fit hand in hand. I think that our recommendation should be that there must be a taxi rank in North End, no matter what.
Thank you. Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just really to be helpful, because I think you're actually trying to be really helpful and conciliatory. And it's just that really that ultimately, if you want a consultation to go ahead, you can mandate that your word is law.
Don't say it like that. Blimey. This meeting will go terribly wrong otherwise. I would like to, with the help of my councillors as well, to have that independent report come through, because I'd really like the rank to be where the taxi trade asked it to be. And London Road definitely 1,000,000% needs a rank. It is so busy up there. Every time I've been to London Road, it's been really busy. I know some of the shops are empty, but there's many, like the new, in the old pound stretch, the new the new foreign supermarket's amazing in there. It's sort of well better than Lidl's for vegetables. I'm not advertising or anything, but it was. So please could you do the independent report, and I'd like another report to go back to maybe the next TNT so people know what's going on other than the licensing committee, please, if that's all right. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah, cool. Don't have to do any proposing, seconding, it's noted, and yeah. That feels weird. Okay, thank you. So, if no one wants to say anything else on that matter, we'll move on to agenda item, is it number 5, for a trial to allow Portsmouth City Council licensed private hire vehicles in bus lanes in Portsmouth. Ms Tidbury, hello, you're over there. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. So the purpose of this report is to note the commitment made at full council on the 9th of November 2021 and the subsequent decision meeting taken at Traffic and Transportation Committee on the 13th of December. This is to undertake a minimum 3-month trial to allow Portsmouth City Council licensed private hire vehicles in bus lanes in Portsmouth. Taxis and private hire vehicles are recognised as an important mode for many and providing 24-hour on-demand travel across the city. This trial would support this mode of transport, potentially enabling improved journey times through access to priority lanes. A closely monitored trial will provide information and data to understand the potential impacts on other users of the bus lanes, such as any bus delays that are experienced and cycle safety. This will be reported back to Traffic and Transportation and also the Licensing Committee. The details of the trial will be developed over the coming months, and we look forward to working with you on the finer details of the trial. We'll be in touch in the early new year to set out the next steps and the details of the working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Tidbury. Ms Tetton, I know you're here too. Is that just to answer some other questions as well, in case they do come up with everyone? I did note that Mr Sutherland did make a little question about asking about 6 months instead of 3, so we get that out of the way first.
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, we're looking at a minimum 3-month trial. So as we gather data throughout the initial stages of the trial, we'll obviously work closely with the working group and the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation to understand if we need to collect further evidence and if that minimum of 3 months needs to be extended. So we'll keep a close eye on it as part of the trial.
Thank you very much. Members, questions or comments at all? Councillor Brown, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think the issue of extending the trial beyond 3 months is particularly important, considering that at the moment many people's habits when it comes to travelling around the city are severely impacted by COVID. It would be nice if we have a longer period of trial that would sort of balance out the ebbs and flows that might arise from that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Weems.
I just wanted to know if there's been any previous trials that are similar and how long they lasted at all.
So we haven't undertaken any previous trials in Portsmouth. We are looking at other areas that do allow private hire vehicles in bus lanes, such as just down the road in Southampton. So as I understand it, they haven't undertaken a trial there currently. That's a permanent scheme. But I think by allowing the trial in Portsmouth, it will allow us to collect that data and evidence to understand if there is an impact on journey times, as I've mentioned.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Councillor Gerarda.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about how cyclists will be consulted. What's your plan with that? Thank you.
So our proposal is to set up a working group early in the new year, and then we would invite all current users and taxi trade onto that working group, so we'd really be able to understand and determine the impacts, and also the monitoring as well. As set out in the report, we're looking to monitor the trial, and that's a really important part, to provide that evidence and feedback. So we'll be working closely with the working group to understand exact locations, how we're actually going to monitor the trial going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Pater-Harris.
Just for more so for the committee, can you just clarify when the trial begins and the political makeup of the working group? Because I know that when we spoke, I think on Tuesday, there was discussion about it being the cabinet member for TNT, the chair of licensing, and potentially some other members.
Yep, absolutely. So as set out in the report, we're looking to start the trial in March 2022. And what we're doing at the moment is we have a dedicated project manager on this trial scheme. So she's currently pulling together the membership of the working group, and we'll be working closely with our colleagues in the licensing committee as well, just to pull together the exact makeup in terms of reference of that working group. But as you say, it will be looking at members and those that currently use the bus lanes for membership.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments at all? I'm quite looking forward to this happening. I think it's a long time coming, and it's. I consider private hire vehicles to be public transport. I don't have a car licence myself. I don't use a car, so I do use taxis quite a lot. And I find that maybe if there's enough space for taxis maybe to get to the north of the city, for instance, more might go up there because they don't have to rely on being stuck in traffic for quite a long period of time, because you do feel that a lot of taxis do get stuck in around Southsea Way, etc. I hope the trial goes well and it is fully implemented afterwards. But at least 3 months, I think 6 months is a good idea, but I guess you'll carry it on as you see fit at that point. Anything else from anyone? No? Okay then, we'll move on to agenda item number 6. I know this is a long one. I'm just going to say, after Nikki has spoken, because there is a lot of points of policy on the consultation, that if you want to speak about a specific piece of policy, tell me and I'll write it down what bit of the policy it is, like 3.3, 3.4 for instance, and the rest of it we'll put down as noted, and that we've, because we don't need to go through it, because otherwise we'll be here every day if I'm going through every single thing individually. So I'll move over to Nikki Humphreys. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, members. The purpose of this item before you today is to consider the proposed amendments to your adopted statement of licensing policy, to have regard to the proposed amendments in line with the taxi and private hire vehicle standards guidance, which was issued by the Secretary of State for Transport in July 2020, to submit proposed policy amendments for trade and public consultation between the 1st of January and the 31st of March next year, and then for this committee to reconvene at a future date to consider all and any responses received when determining its policy. Members, as you are aware, the purpose of policy is to set standards, and your policy should be made and based on evidence in order to formulate any local requirements, and should not be introduced without prior consultation or on a whim. The Department for Transport expects its recommendations to be implemented unless there is a compelling local reason not to. Appendix B of that report sets out the relevant DFT guidance, your current PCC policy, and any subsequent recommendations arising from that statutory guidance. And I don't propose to go through them all with you, members, because there are considerable recommendations contained, and obviously it'll be better to address any specific questions against those numbered recommendations. I will just turn to the issue of livery, which has brought about a number of deputations before you this afternoon. And I wanted to advise you that your policy in relation to livery is in relation to town cars. So vehicles that do airport work or executive work will fall outside of that requirement. They have exemptions, and it is not proposed that those exemptions change in any way when that document goes out for consultation. In terms of the summary of compliance that you have been provided with, I wanted to confirm that this is time that licensing enforcement officers have had to spend in noting non-compliance of drivers that are not using the livery in the way that you agreed that could be done. As you all are aware, COVID has had terrible implications for the city, and it's also had resourcing implications for the council as a whole. We've been actively involved in assisting all types of licensed trade through the pandemic who have been subject to restrictive regulations in terms of their business. Simply put, members, the time that was spent by my officers over the preceding 12 months has been focused on those areas where the demand is most required. I'm sure as members of the committee you would prefer the licensing service to be focusing on those priorities rather than driving around the city looking for vehicles that aren't complying with the requirements that you put forward. In terms of looking at the numbers we have provided as examples, and those are examples raised specifically from service requests, so they are verified data that we have available to us when monitoring complaints. And I would say to you, members, if I can compare this to another area of the work that you are responsible for in terms of licensed premises, so I'm looking at alcohol, entertainment premises, of which we have nearly 900 premises in the city that have that responsibility. If I were to report to you that 30, 40 premises in the city were failing to comply with licensing conditions, I would suspect that you would have concerns in that level of non-compliance because of the issues of public safety. And I don't believe that the issues that are being brought for your attention today in terms of the non-compliance should be viewed any differently. This is a mandatory condition that you applied to licenses, and we have demonstrated through initial research we've done that that is not being complied with as per your instructions. I want to talk about limiting of competition. And there are a number of factors to consider in relation to whether proposals would limit competition in industry. And there are 4 tests that the authority or any authority must look at when considering proposals. And those are, will the measures directly or indirectly limit the number or range of suppliers? Will the measure limit the ability of suppliers to compete? Will the measure limit suppliers' incentives to compete? Or will the measure limit the choices and information available to consumers? Now, we took those tests into consideration when putting these proposals to you today in this report. I also wanted to mention to you in relation to a little bit of benchmarking in terms of the situation with licensed vehicles displaying mandatory livery. a number of local authorities and large local authorities have recently implemented policy that requires vehicles to have livery of the operator that they're working under on those vehicles. And those specifically Southampton, Eastleigh, Wolverhampton, Leeds, and I think Manchester is another. So this isn't a new concept. This is a factor that is coming through in the licensing regime when we're looking at safety standards and we are adjusting policies and practices to recognise the changes that are happening in our city at the moment with various types of private hire trading. We are all aware, because the trade representatives have spoke to you at length on occasion about cross-border hiring, that you know that vehicles from anywhere in the country can come into Portsmouth, work, and there is nothing that the local authority can do to prevent that. It's a legal activity. But what that presents to you in your city is that gives you different standards. So you could have a local authority that doesn't need signage, that doesn't have signage, doesn't have any recognisable identification where that vehicle is from, probably doesn't have the same standards in terms of CCTV, and without identification on our vehicles to say that these are Portsmouth vehicles, it can impinge on the people's vulnerability. It can impinge on the safety of people getting into taxis. If you see in the report, the Appendix B that I gave to you, there is some photographic evidence there of our vehicles, so they're Portsmouth licensed vehicles, and they're not displaying plates, they're not displaying livery, and if you look at that as a vehicle at night, would you say that that was a taxi, a private hire vehicle, or does it look like any other private vehicle that you would expect to see on the road? I don't propose to say any more because I'm sure you will want to ask more questions about any issues that have risen either through your own considerations or through the deputation, so I'll probably just finish there and answer any questions as and when you have them, members.
Thank you, Nikki. I was going to come out and say, can we leave livery for the end of the discussion? We'll go through the other policy points first, and then livery will be last because it will be the most contentious point I know, and we can have a more rounded discussion. Members, do you have any parts of the policy specifically that you would like to ask questions about this point? Just questions, mind you. Councillor Brown. Oh, no.
Thank you, Chair. Did you want the list of which sections I wanted to ask first so that you can collate them for everyone?
You can just go through questions and then I can write them down as well so I know where we're at. It's fine. That's just going to be...
So I've got a question on section 3.4, recommendation 6. I've got a question on 4.0 on recommendation 7. I've got a question on 4.8, recommendation 16. On 5.4, recommendation 21, on 6.0, recommendation 23, and on 8.1, recommendation 31. And Nikki, I'll apologise in advance. I had intended to email these to you this week. Sorry.
Councillor, I'm pleased that the Chair is making a list of those sections.
So we got 3.4, recommendation number 6. It just proves that you've read the document, Councillor Brown, so thank you, because it is very exhausting. It's a few evenings in bed with a cup of tea reading through it, definitely, to this meeting. So yeah, I had 3.4 recommendation number 6 first.
Councillor, this is really following the guidance that the DFT have said, is that if you do amend any policy in relation to suitability of applicants, you have to revisit, I would say probably on renewal, a person's suitability to continue to hold that licence with that new policy in place.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. The question I had was specifically about the wording that's included in the DFT guidance that's not included in our recommendation about including a grace period. So I think in page 33, paragraph 3.14 of the DFT statutory guidance, it specifically says there shouldn't be any immediate suspensions, immediate revocations, but I was a bit concerned that that safeguard wasn't included, specifically mentioned in our recommendation. So just looking for some reassurance that when we do apply new standards, and rightly so, hold everyone to those standards, they're going to have time if they have any changes they need to make to bring them up to code, rather than just saying, it's changed, you're gone.
Certainly the wording of that can be brought forward when you make your decision to make that clear. I think you will need to retain some discretion, because depending on whatever change it is, that it may have an immediate impact for public safety. So you want to give yourselves some leverage, but I think it would be reasonable to say that those would be reviewed at the latest on renewal of the licence.
Super, thank you.
Councillor Gerarded, it was on this point. Yes, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I just was going to raise a similar point to Councillor Brown and agree with the points that he's made, but I just wondered what the time frame would be if there is, things that people have to change in terms of getting their licensing up to standard. Thank you.
Depending on the licence, so if it is a private hire or a hackney carriage driver licence, licences can be issued either for 12 months or for 3 years, which is why I'm saying about your leverage. Private hire operators can be 12 months or 5 years, but private hire vehicles and hackney carriage vehicles all have a maximum term of 12 months. So there is a variety of times you may feel for certain changes that 5 years would be too long to review existing licence holders, but a 12-month or less than 12 months would be suitable.
Very natural, Mr. Natural.
Thank you, Chair. I think it might just be useful for me to just interject at this stage. It really just goes as a reminder to everybody here that obviously the document that we're working through today is a consultation document, and I know that it was mentioned earlier during one of the deputations that matters had come before the committee without consultation. Well, this is the start of that consultation process, so there will be no decisions today to implement any policy changes. This is the start of that discussion process. It's starting the ball rolling. And I think obviously we're going to go through a whole list of points that members are bringing to the licensing officer's attention. My recommendation, Chair, is that the subcommittee notes all these issues that are raised and that they be addressed when the matter comes back in the licensing officer's report. Obviously they'll be minuted and they can be addressed along with all the other representations that are received following the consultation process once it's run its full course. Does that make sense, Chair?
Right, thank you, Ben. Councillor Brown, you had 4.0 recommendation seven.
Thank you, Chair. Nicola, my question on this one was about the whether there was a cost implication for drivers to subscribe to the DBS update service, because if we're looking at making it mandatory for them to do so and it's going to have a cost implication for them, have we considered making use of the multiple status check facility instead, so we can batch do all of them in one go rather than making them have to shell out? If the isn't a cost implication, then yeah, fine.
Councillor, the actual cost implications will reduce the cost of the price for getting the DBS check. Currently, the way that we do it through a paper application through to DBS, I think is about £35. And if they were doing it like this every 6 months, they would be paying £35 every 6 months, and obviously the time for your officers in having to do that with all the drivers every 6 months. But the online, the update service comes with a registration, so they have to register with the DBS update, but that is a registration fee of £13 a year, and then that means that the local authority can check that automatically without the driver having to come in the office, pay and show ID. So it is actually better for all concerned.
Yes, I agree. £13 a year is definitely better than £70 a year.
Thank you. Is there any other points and councillors on just that for the moment? No. We had 4.816.
Thank you. Again, it's a point about wording that's in the DFT guidance being left out of our recommendation there around the criminal records information where possible as an option, as well as a certificate of good character, because of some countries not supplying certificates of good character for residencies under 6 months. I think it's fully right and proper that if anyone's lived abroad, even for 1 day is long enough to potentially commit a criminal act. But if those countries wouldn't supply those certificates under 6 months, we should be looking at having the possibility of the criminal records information as well.
Members, you were, in terms of this recommendation, you were probably ahead of your time in terms of asking for certificates of good conduct, because you have asked for that for some considerable period of years. I have suggested the change from 10, which was the age that the committee thought at that time, in 2016, that was the age of criminal liability, but to go along with the guidance proposed by the DFT is saying what you're doing at the moment meets with that standard, but we just will increase the age to 18 in recognition of the advice by DFT. But yes, you already require certificate of good conduct as part of your application process.
Thanks, Nick. I mean, my question was more about including the possibility to have criminal records information as well as the certificate of good conduct when good conduct certificates aren't available.
It very much depends on the originating country where that person has resided as to what information is available. The Home Office provide useful information for local authorities and for applicants that dictates through the embassies whether they can get that criminal record or whether it has to be a certificate. So yes, that will be incorporated in there.
I think I remember doing a committee over a driver that wouldn't get a criminal check from Eritrea once, and that went to a subcommittee, yeah. So we do quite hot on it. Thank you for that one. Any questions on that one at all? And I'll just move it. When I've done through Councillor Brown's questions, I'll move on to someone else's. So we had 5.421. Blimey.
Yeah, so looking at 5.4, again, looking at the current PCC guidelines on relevance of convictions, it looks like there's quite a few listed on the DFT guidance that aren't in our current policy. Would it make sense to get those included as well?
Members, there is a broad remit which I felt with the consultation process, there is a lot of considerations that you will want to take into account when you make your decision, and there's a variety of data that you can rely on. You can rely on your own policy that is fairly recent and has obviously has taken into consideration local needs, local issues. You've obviously got the information suggested by the DFT, which I think is, you're looking at, that's your minimum, because that's, you're compelled to look at that unless there's a reason not to. And then you've also got, which I think is an appendix to the report, is the Institute of Licensing. And they work with the DFT, with other local authority, local government association. So you may find that there's a bit of dipping into this one and a dipping into that one. And I think it would just be something that throw it into the consultation and see what responses come back. And indeed, members will be able to put back into that consultation as well as other agencies, safeguarding, police. There will be an extensive consultation to get those views back to you for consideration.
Thank you. 6.023.
So the notes I'd asked here to ask about was if there was some overlap in this one with recommendation 7. So if we've got the mandatory subscription to the DBS update service, do we still need the full enhanced check every 6 months, which I think was the implication from recommendation 23?
My understanding is that it is, Councillor. The DBS update service is to make it more efficient for drivers and for us to check those records every 6 months. This recommendation looks at how they're checked within the DBS service. So there's certain checks that, as well as any criminal record, we will also be looking at barred lists, so if they're prevented from working with children or vulnerable adults.
I think in this case then it's my understanding of the recommendation, because I thought that meant we were going to be asking them to do the £35 paperwork check. No, that's just us looking at that's fine.
Thank you very much. We have 8.131.
So in the first bullet point on this one, the register of operators taking bookings and dispatching vehicles. This is, I think, mostly a question for my clarification and my understanding. For app-based vehicle hire, such as Uber, who, in that case, is the operator taking the booking and dispatching? Is it the app? Is it the driver? Is it some data controller in America? Is there an answer?
I think that's a very good question, and a question that the officers have also mulled over in terms of this. What I can say to you is that we will seek further advice from the DFT and our colleagues nationally, because nationally all licensing authorities are having to look at these criteria, and I will feed back at the determination what that is expected to contain, and perhaps we can add more clarification if needs be when it comes back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nikki, and sorry for the interrogation.
You're welcome.
And Chair, yes, I have got comments on the livery points as well, but I'm sure every member of the committee does.
We'll come back to it. Any other questions on any other policy points? Councillor Pate-Harris.
It's just 10.0, which is more of an annoyance than a point. It's like we discussed going over wheelchair accessible vehicles about a year ago. It's actually a year ago, yeah. And we had a very animated discussion where we changed our policy under the recommendations of the officers, and now we're changing our policy again under the recommendation of the officers, and it's because we all did it just to get £500,000, which is quite annoying because it's not really fair. I mean, I'm going to say this from an annoyance point of view, it's not fair on the trade, because effectively we've basically messed them around for a year, and now we're deciding actually you could have kept your vehicles up for 12 years instead of 8. So it's more of a, I'm just making a comment that it's actually annoyed me more than anything, because we had an opportunity to do that a year ago, and we're just going to do it anyway from looking at the policy. But it's nice to see that the officers have finally changed their mind and come around to my way of thinking.
Thanks, Councillor Pate-Harris. Councillor Gerardo, did you have any other policy points to talk about? I know you waved at the beginning. No? Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. It's 11.1. And so one of the deputies raised a question about the percentage and the lack of evidence. I'm assuming, and hopefully Nikki can confirm and expand on this, that the data table here, 11.1, which shows just shy of fewer than 30 people that have been prosecuted, that is the evidence table that we are basing the policy around when we do get to livery. Is that correct?
This is information that I've been able to retrieve from the database in terms of actual service requests that were raised by officers, and if they've been out on nighttime enforcement and they see a vehicle and then they stop. This doesn't include any reference to complaints that we may have received separately. This is purely data that has been supplied by my enforcement officers of what they've observed.
Thank you. And just a follow-on question is just really for information as a layman and somebody that does use taxis occasionally, but not often because I do drive, but if I'm going on a night out, I'll get an Uber more often than not, or get a Hackney carriage home and whatever. But obviously, when you're ordering on an app, or I understand Aqua have an app as well, you can see the details of the driver and of the car before it even turns up. So that's why some of the stuff that was talked about in the deputations was slightly confusing for me. Do we have taxis in the city where it would be physically, like, if you were to see them in the street and if they weren't showing their livery, that you would have no idea that they were a taxi, or like if you were to order it and they pulled up, because there aren't many taxi firms in the city. You've got Aqua, Michael Nobe's firm, Andy Cars, I think it is, Uber, the private hire Hackney carriages. I mean, just some of it seems a bit confusing to me, like when I'm sat here reading the reports, listening to the deputations and then reading the huge amount of detail, I'm like, well, how have we got to that point?
Partly, Councillor New, it is because the way that the private hire industry work now is far different to how it may have been 10 years ago. Private hire licensing was very localised. You would have drivers that wanted to work in Portsmouth and would license in Portsmouth, and you wouldn't see a lot of out-of-town vehicles coming into the city other than, you know, dropping people off and picking up. The situation since the Deregulation Act has changed that position. Vehicles are now, bookings are now able to be subcontracted. You can have apps where you may use the app in Portsmouth, say Uber, to call for a private hire car, but there's no guarantee that car will be a Portsmouth licensed vehicle. You could get a Southampton, you could get Fareham, you could get any Uber, Brighton, you could get any Uber that would be in our city coming to take that booking. And if there were complaints about that car, or can I just put it into another example, a vehicle is involved in a traffic accident or an altercation with a pedestrian or a cyclist, that vehicle without the council livery isn't very distinguishable as to who it's licensed by, other than it may have a Wolverhampton plate, but I can guarantee to you that the first instance of complaints will come to Portsmouth, and then it will be down to us to try and establish whether that is a Portsmouth licensed vehicle or whether that vehicle is licensed elsewhere. So the issue of having delivery on the car, even though it's being done by an app, will allow those cars to be identified as it's an Uber, but it's a Portsmouth Uber.
Thank you. And just one final question, because it's touched on in the report, and this is more for clarification, because I've experienced this recently, where it talks about when a job is booked, whether it's via an app or I suppose over the phone, and you quite often on the apps, I won't name who it is, you're waiting, it says they're 2 minutes away, and then it just gets cancelled, and then you're then waiting for another one. And I tell you what, as somebody that does drive, that's really annoying. I'm guessing though, because it is noted in 11.1 that it is kind of relevant to this wider problem of what's before us today.
Yes, Councillor, I'm sorry I didn't expand on that in my introduction to the report. Through no fault of the trade, and we all know again through the pandemic how every industry has been affected, the private hire and Hackney carriage trade has been significantly impacted. This has resulted in a shortage of taxi private hire drivers nationally. It's a national picture, it's not local. And that has created, obviously, bookings are still there, but the vehicles aren't available for those jobs to be fulfilled. Equally, because drivers are at the moment are able to use multiple apps at any one time, they could, and I think I use the words cherry pick, but there could be a point, and I think it probably does happen, that a driver could see, oh, well, that's only a 2-mile job. I'm going to wait. I'm going to cancel that booking, and I'm going to wait for another job that might take me out of town. I have concerns that that practice could accelerate and get exacerbated because there is a shortage of drivers at the moment, that they will be chasing the bigger job. And what I don't want to see is vulnerable people late at night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, left late night, wanting to get home. There's no taxis, and there's no taxis or apps accepting bookings for a job that may be 2 miles to Southsea, then they may look on the other apps to say, well, hang on a minute, I don't that will only make me £4, but if I take that job, I can get 8. And I think that's a relevant consideration that you've got to think of. Allowing multiple apps could allow that cherry picking to affect the safety and the bookings, customer satisfaction. You book a taxi, you don't want to wait an hour to be picked up.
Thank you. Thank you for expanding on that. I'm really grateful as well for that level of information and the clarification as well. It's really helpful, certainly for myself today. And I completely take the points that you made as well. And I suppose really the twofold really is a comment, Chair, if that's okay. I can completely see from the taxi trade side about how it has been hard. It's been hard for so many people. But I've seen obviously how through other forums within the council when it's come forward that they've been particularly hard hit and it's been difficult. And so I can understand why they would potentially look to cherry pick jobs, and at the same time obviously I do share your concerns about people's safety, especially vulnerable people as well, so thank you for the clarification.
Just for the moment, I saw Peter Sutherland squirming in his chair a little bit, so I'm just going to let him speak for a moment very briefly. Hello, Mr. Sutherland.
Thank you, Chair. Squirming is over. I just want to try and clarify a couple of points, if I may, Nikki and Councillor New. I don't deny, Nikki, that cherry picking may well go on, but then I would also put it to the Council, be careful, because as a self-employed licensed driver, it's my right. As inconvenient as it might be as an end product, it's my right to choose where I place my labour. Coming back to your point, Councillor, about cancellations, I can't speak for other operators, only Uber, but I will try to explain that what does happen sometimes, and I don't claim it all the time, but what does happen sometimes is that when a driver has accepted a job, he's already on a job. I'm driving somebody to Portchester, and when I get to Corsham, a job comes up in Portchester, it'll allocate it to me. And as I get near Portchester, I'm dropping somebody off on West Street, the person says, oh, and then can you take my partner up to the crematorium? And then they chatted, in order for me to do that, they have to physically change the booking on the app. And the moment they change the booking on the app will drop the job that I've got as a secondary job, because that trip is continuing. And the app will then automatically search for another driver, and it'll come up at your end as a cancellation looking for another vehicle. So just by way of explanation how that works from the inside, because it's not quite sort of public knowledge as to how these apps work. Thank you, Chair.
No, I'm welcome for the clarification. I did often wonder as I cycle through apps. Obviously, if Uber's got a surge on, I'm not liable to book through them at the time. Mr. Hall did want to make a counterpoint at this, I guess.
On the subject of livery, a lot of people have perceived that the operator wants to be the big beast in all this. When it comes to livery, I don't mind who they work for, but as a customer, they should know whose car they're getting into. Hold on a minute, Pete, you've had your say. Now, if that's by magnetics or by stickers, I don't care, as long as the cars that are going around Portsmouth have got the livery on the vehicles. Okay? If you make a policy and they say they must have Hackney stickers on the back, make sure they're on the back. Magnetics, make sure they're on the back. If you have to have the operator on the front of the door, whether it's a magnetic, it has to be mandated and sorted, which then means that the licensing department have to go out and monitor, see what's going on, and then take steps to stop the people who think they can just go around the roughshod exactly all the rules that you learned people are putting into place. It's either one thing or the other. You're either going to take them all off and just let everybody do what they want, or you put signage on. They can work for Uber, they can work for Bolt, I don't care who they work for, but as long as the people know whose car they're getting into and where it's licensed from, that's all that matters.
Thank you. I'm liable to get into discussion with taxi drivers, and really it's supposed to be members' comments. I do have a slight question, just for Uber. When you have an Uber job, if you might be driving for Bolt as well, as Uber drivers, are you mandated to have your livery on when you're driving for Uber? Is that part of your rules, or you don't have to have it if you didn't have to?
Chair, if I can answer that, as Uber drivers, we're not required to show any operator livery whatsoever.
Thank you for that.
If we had other operators livery on, for example, if I was driving for Aqua Cars and I had a job and I was multi-apping and I had a job for Uber, if my Aqua Car livery was permanently a fixed livery, then yeah, I could pull up and do the Uber job, but it would be very, very difficult if I got an Aqua livery on the side of the car. And that's what we're talking about with fixed operator livery, is that you couldn't easily swap. You'd be restricted to the operator that you'd be working with. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I am aware of that. I'm just more for if it was magnetic, if you're multi-apping, would you pull over and change the livery on the side of your car at that point? I'm going to move away from the taxi drivers because we are done members' comments. We will get to livery properly, but I just want to go, we've got so much policy to go through. You had a thing about, just a clarification about your job. Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to say that in terms of vulnerable people being left out from cherry picking, the Equality and Diversity Act allows the council and the enforcement team to actually prosecute those people. So if you're ordering a taxi and the taxi is cancelling and you feel vulnerable, you can raise a complaint with the council. The council can investigate with the operator why that booking was not fulfilled, and then the driver could be prosecuted. So you have tools that would allow you to prosecute those behaviors rather than just removing and stripping away their freedoms for the drivers. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I had Councillor Madgwick next on my list.
I was just trying to clarify, Chair, whether we are moving on to section 11 now because it's started. Are we moving back? Are we on it? Or
Councillor was a tiny bit cheeky for going straight into everything you asked it for, but I just want to do the rest of the point.
My apologies, Chair. I think I did have some valid questions about it before we moved to comments. Apologies if I've disrupted the flow.
I did have some stuff circled, but I just can't even remember why I circled it whilst I was reading it at the moment. Councillor Ashmore, was this about different policy? I know you're on my list as well.
It was on section 11. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask something on it now.
If there's any other policy points that people want to ask questions on right now, and we will move on to section 11. So Councillor Ashmore, have some fun. Right now, let's do it. We're on livery.
7 ages ago. Sorry, George, you was going to speak, weren't you? Oh, was that the question? Oh, right. Yeah, I think you should go first then.
Okay, Councillor Madgwick.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and get through what I've got to say in one go rather than going back and forth just for the speed purposes. I've got a couple of questions which maybe Nikki or Peter could answer. But obviously we keep talking about, on page 91, we keep obviously talking about public safety benefit. Now I see obviously references to examples of cars driving or being stationary without the livery on it. But we actually got any factual examples of direct health and safety risks to the public, like actually reported? Because at the moment this is just speculation of, it might be, and we've seen lots of photos of cars looking nice and flashy without it, but they don't, in my opinion, pose a public safety risk at that state. So I want to know if there's been actually any reported or direct reported issues or anything as a result of them directly not having the library. Forget everything else, just directly from not having the library. If so, what are they? And also, I'd like to kind of be aware, is there any members of the general public that have actually made any complaints to the licensing department simply about not having livery on the cars, or are we just assuming? The other things I want to say, and I say I'll wrap it up all in one big thing rather than talking lots of times. It alarms me that the licensing department has stated, sorry, Nikki, but I'm really sorry. But as point of the, I hate doing this. As point of one of the reasons for having permanent livery on the vehicles was stated that obviously because of the people are being non-compliant, that officers' time is spent chasing these vehicles around, taking photos, and I respect that, and it is a massive use of licensing's time. And your argument was that obviously, would you rather us do that as a licensing department, or would you rather us do something more serious? But I don't understand why we've got to penalise hundreds of self-employed drivers because we as a council can't afford more licensing people to look after other areas. I think it's really unfair that we're penalising self-employed drivers because we as a council can't afford to hire more people. I think that's something we've got to sort out internally, especially as we've got a budget coming up in February, maybe. And hopefully we can support the licensing department and give them some more money so they can hire some more people and we can do our jobs effectively. In regards to this whole non-compliance thing, and the reference to, if there was 30 restaurants or bars breaking the rules, then we'd be looking at things. No, what would happen is you would bring them to our committee, to a subcommittee, and we as committee members and members would then put restrictions on their licences, or we would remove the DPS from the licence, we would, worst case scenario, completely remove the licence from the premises. So why are we even suggesting to penalise 97% of our self-employed industry to appease the 3% that are breaking the rules? And furthermore, these 3% that are going to break the rules, if we now make livery permanent, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go to another council, Fareham, Havant, who don't impose this mandatory stuff, and guess what? Because they're rule breakers, they're going to work in Portsmouth anyway, but guess what? Without the livery. So now we've lost drivers under the council, which completely counteracts the point about having people waiting outside, like women and elderly people waiting for taxis, because guess what? Those taxi drivers have now gone to Havant and Fareham, where the conditions are a lot less, and they can work more freely. So we're going to lose more drivers in the city. I just think this is ridiculous, and I know it's only a consultation. I respect that, and I know we're going to go away, and public and the trade will have an opinion, it will come back to us, but why are we wasting time on it? It's really, really bad, and it's going to affect our self-employed people, it's going to directly affect their families. It's terrible. I mean, I own restaurants. If somebody comes to me and said, oh, I work for McDonald's, and the council said that I have to wear my McDonald's badge whilst working in your restaurant, I'm not going to allow it. These are self-employed people. They're not employed people. If, as a council, and this is my last point, Chair, I am sorry, but if, as a council, we are going to say to the taxi drivers, self-employed taxi drivers, we're mandating you, essentially, to work for one taxi company, because effectively that's what's going to happen. It is going to end up becoming mandated to work for one taxi company, then they, by default, become employed, and then we've got a whole issue about employment rights and all this other stuff, and these are self-employed drivers. They can work for who they want, when they want, and the second you take that right away, they become employed. So then we've got to discuss about employment rights and everything else that becomes a mess. Of course drivers can cherry pick their jobs. They're self-employed. They're business people. If they want to pick to work for Aqua because they pay £2 more, they want to work for Joe Bloggs because they pay £4 more, why shouldn't they? They're self-employed. We're not employing them, we're not paying them an hourly wage, so they shouldn't conform to our regulations on that. Anyway, sorry for being annoying, but that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. I think there were two questions in there, Nikki. Did you get them?
I can certainly say to you about the vehicles and livery and what does it matter if they haven't got it on. We are talking licensed vehicles. I don't know whether Ben would like to reaffirm that through case law, but once a taxi, always a taxi. Once a private hire vehicle, always a private hire vehicle. The law doesn't say in terms of signage on the vehicle, because the signage, say, with the plates, because that's in the 76 Act, it does not say in that statute, when you're not working, you can take it off. It's saying if you license this vehicle, this plate has to be affixed to that vehicle. And case law over the years has strengthened that argument by saying that it has a different criteria. The car does not change. It doesn't metamorphosize when you use it privately or when you use it professionally. It is, whilst it is licensed, recognised as a private hire or hackney carriage vehicle. In fact, years and years ago, and I look behind me because Mr. Lee is just maybe a few years more experience than me, hackney carriages used to have their own taxation class, and they had different requirements on them as vehicles. But Mr. Young's looking at me because he's of that age too, that those vehicles actually had to be MOT'd every 12 months as opposed to every 3 years. So, we are looking at a professional driver, we are looking at a professional vehicle, and it's not, they can't be hybrids. It is a licensed vehicle until that licence is revoked or not renewed.
I respect that. The specific question was, I know we've got photos of stationary vehicles and obviously vehicles, but have we got any actual factual reports, examples, things that members can see that have a negative impact on health and safety of the general public has been as a direct result of the lack of livery? That's the precise question. Have we had any reports of a negative or criminal offence or anything like that happening as a direct result of the lack of livery?
Just before, I think Ross and Nikki are having a discussion. I think Ben wants to maybe answer some bits.
No, I was just going to say that the case law, if I remember rightly, is Benson against Boyce for private hire vehicles, and I think it was Edwards for hackney carriage vehicles.
There you go, there's a case law for you there. Is there an answer on the public safety?
There is, but I don't think it could be if it was to members to grade to inform, I'd have to take advice from Ben, but there has been some issues, but I don't think I can comment on that.
I'm not keen to move into closed session to have a discussion.
So I can certainly follow that up with members.
Yeah. But next is Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Just really following on from one of the points that Councillor Madrick just very eloquently made regarding the table on page 89, which shows the non-compliance, a couple of photos of some vehicles that have been non-compliant with the livery. I just want to know, I can't see if that's repeat offenders. Is it just a couple of people that are repeat offending, or is it lots of different cars doing it, so it's because otherwise it really is it's just a couple of people ruining it for the rest of them, and I think that needs to be brought out more, because otherwise we're not going to be able to make a fair decision on this.
I can confirm that these are all separate incidents. If you look at the first picture where you can see that the magnetic sticker is not on the door, it is on the side of the vehicle. I can personally say that I've seen myself at least 3 drivers for doing that. What drivers have done is they want magnetic stickers, but certain types of vehicles, the door frames are aluminium, so the magnets don't stick to them. But rather than getting an adhesive, because of that problem, the drivers will move the signage to an unauthorised area, which is exampled in that first picture. Members, I'm here as an impartial officer in terms of providing you with evidence. If I considered that the extent of non-compliance in terms of the livery was insignificant enough for us to be able to tidy it up and touch it up, then I would be reporting that to you today. The trouble is that that's not the case. That's not the case. I'm sure Ross mentioned to me actually just as we came into the office today for the meeting this evening, he personally saw 2 vehicles driving without livery on the vehicles as he came into the city. Now that's either an awful coincidence or it is demonstrative that there are problems associated with that livery in the city.
I was going to say, yesterday I saw someone with the oval livery still on their car. Is that still allowed? Technically?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That was the first time I saw that, but obviously no. Councillor Gerardo.
Thank you, Chair. I guess what I would say through reading through this recommendation is really the lack of evidence and data that's been presented. I feel very uncomfortable. I know that this is a consultation, but I feel very uncomfortable noting a report that is making such a strong recommendation that will severely impact the lives and livelihoods of literally hundreds of people in the city on a list of reports, as detailed by Councillor New, that literally is only of about 30 reports from council officers. So what I expected to see was a breakdown of compliance versus non-compliance in proportions and actual figures, so that we could make a more educated decision about whether or not we should proceed on this. And I think that really shines through that there is a real lack of evidence and data. In terms of the penalties for non-compliance, it does just feel like perhaps there need to be a trial of more severe penalties, perhaps, because just having strong words of people and giving them a sort of tap on the wrist for non-compliance is obviously not really going to stop people's behaviour and change people's behaviour. So I just wondered if there had been any investigations into what might help to change people's behaviour in this regard and to ensure compliance, rather than changing a whole policy which is going to so negatively impact the lives of many local workers. I also wondered what the consultation and engagement had been with local taxi firms to come to this as an issue and to try and change this in a more, sort of inclusive approach in terms of engaging with key stakeholders rather than sort of retracting what is obviously clearly a policy that is working for a lot of taxi drivers across the city. And also I felt somewhat uncomfortable with page 91, the last paragraph there, the reasons for moving to a fixed livery. I felt that it was just quite weak, and actually it's conflating a number of issues. So saying things like, they have an ability to switch operator with no notice, which could have a negative impact on waiting times for pre-packed journeys. This has the most serious implications for most vulnerable passengers, for example, lone females or the elderly. Where is the evidence of that? Really I would like some hard evidence and data and facts about that, because it's just a sort of suggestion that this might be something that's happening, but actually we don't know that it is. Sorry, Chair, I'll get to the end of my questions. And on the following page, again at the top, page 92, there's quite a big claim there that's being made regarding a news article that isn't even relevant to our city, and it would be helpful, and even if we do have to come back in a private session to hear about these cases if they are confidential, I would like to hear about them first before something like this is put out even for consultation, frankly. And I think ultimately, the decision that we'll end up making is going to have a huge impact on a trade, as we've all sort of heard, has been severely impacted by COVID-19. And ultimately, I think, it needs, this particular item in the report needs a lot more consideration and thought, and shouldn't just be an appendage to something that was also tacked on to, DFT mandatory requirements. This needs a whole sort of, I think, looking into entirely from the committee. And just of my own experiences, I use a variety of local taxi providers for various reasons. I do use app-based taxis, and I have to say, as a woman, often getting back from, say, London on the train late at night, our local taxi services have been exemplary. And actually, when I have used an app-based service and my trains ended up being late, they have waited for me way beyond the time that is necessary, and they've explicitly said it's because you're a woman and it's late at night, and I want you to get on home at time. And my journey actually from Fratton Station to my house is very short, but I found local taxi drivers to be excellent. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before you answer anything, I see where this is going. So before you all say the same thing to me over and over again, which everyone else is doing, page 92, the recommendations, I will propose that we just read those recommendations at this point. only to say that it is going into consultation, and the likelihood at this moment, because of the view of members, is that the policy would probably remain the same. I also want taxi drivers to know that whilst I personally don't agree with what some councillors here are saying, I personally would like fixed at the back, so we know they're Portsmouth taxis, especially when they're going out of the city, but magnetic at the front, for instance, and I will engage with that process. And number two, and Nikki knows this, I completely hate the back livery, the Portsmouth livery that we changed it to, the tiny A4, I can't stand it. I miss the oval, so I'll feed into the process that maybe we change the design and have something with that, and have the trade consult on a nice design on the back of the cars, for instance. But just noted that we are going into consultation. We do want to harsher penalties for people if we keep the same policy, and that we don't need to have these recommendations at the moment, and that we've listened to the trade, and whilst there's things that we don't want to hear or do want to hear, I can see what the makeup of the committee is now, and when this gets heard again, which is very likely in May, because it probably won't be heard before PERDA, and I'm not going to be here at that point, there'll be someone else sat in this chair, and there'll probably be the same councillors at the moment. So if someone wants to just do this now, because we're just going to say the same thing over and over again for the next hour otherwise. Do you not agree, Councillor Payne-Harris?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to second that recommendation as well, Chair. And the only thing I will add is it's something that Councillor Gerarda said about the data and the data set, and I think she's made some really important points about the data we have in front of us. I mean, we have 33 incidents here of non-compliance with livery, and that equates to just over 5 incidents a month in a 6-month period, but the trial was actually for 12 months. So I think, if anything, it gives the licensing team an objective to go out and actually gather more data, and I'd probably say deliver more evidence. I think Councillor Gerarda asked about some instances that we might have to go into closed session to hear, and I think it's right that we should do that at a later period to hear them, so we can actually get a full picture of what is going on, so we can make a really balanced decision, because at the moment I don't think we have enough evidence on the table to make the recommendations as they are, so I'm quite happy to second your recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. I was just going to say, if you do want to hear about other issues in taxis as councillors on the licensing committee, please ask the licensing managers, and they can give you outlines of different things that have happened, because obviously, because we hear taxi driver stuff in subcommittees in closed session, obviously we just don't want to give any details, because it could we just don't want to identify anyone that may have been a victim of a crime, for instance, at this point. I'm just mindful of going over the same things. This definitely will be in consultation, and everyone needs to fill in. I just want the recommendations to say, we are consulting on considering changing our policy. Please engage with us. That's pretty much all I want to say on the matter. And the other things, maybe at the next licensing meeting, that all the other policy bits that we've pretty gone, that's all right, be a separate agenda item to the livery policy, and then hopefully, because I don't feel like too many people are going to engage with the other parts of the policy, because they seem pretty reasonable on the DFT, on the guidance here. I just wanted to, you've got your finger on the button, Nikki, I know you want to speak, please do.
I just wanted to clarify, and I think Ben probably wants to give you some legal advice. I take your point in terms of there's two issues here that are sort of combining together. There's the points of the problems we're having with magnetic livery, and that the information that we provided to you. If you wish the enforcement officers to focus their time on that particular aspect of enforcement, then obviously I can put those resources to that for you. But I don't have an insurmountable available resource, and we do get obviously some situations, if you've sat on licensing subcommittees, you know the kinds of work that my officers have to do, you know that they are actively involved in prosecutions, which, and those are in the public interest. So if your concerns are that the information that we can supply to you as officers, you want loads of it to justify the change, then we're going to have a shift in how we resource our department, and what's that level of risk if we focus on that area. The other issue is about the display of livery, and there's two issues. The display of livery on for Portsmouth City Council livery is mandatory, not the operator. And I think there was some overlap with that with Councillor in terms of the operator livery is a proposal to go out on consultation, but it is a prerequisite that all vehicles have to have that livery on. It's just the fact that we're not seeing the level of compliance. I do want to apologise for the signage that we have on our existing vehicles. I hate it myself, but we were in a position coming out of the pandemic where the committee were very insistent that you wanted the magnetic policy to be put into place for the benefit of the trade, and I had very little suppliers to turn to at that time to give me the opportunity to have something far nicer than what we're with. However, we can address that. That is not a problem. We can look at changing that livery straight away. I think if we go out to consultation on the issue of livery as a whole and operator livery, if that's what committee wish to proceed, we can definitely split. We can split between the statutory guidance, which I think everybody is quite happy with in terms of our position as a licensing authority and how it will ultimately accord with what the government is saying we're supposed to do. So we put that. We have a separate report for you, subject to the consultation, which looks at livery as a whole, whether that's operator livery, whether that's council livery, whether that's magnetic and adhesive.
Thank you. I had loads of people want to say things. I had people before. I know that. So I had Councillor Peter Harris before I made those recommendations. Did you want to say something? Sorry, I've got my list, I need to find it.
No, it's not really, I'm just happy for us. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak. We've made the recommendation to remove that part from the report and to move... But
still acknowledge that we will be going through consultation.
Yeah, the consultation
and people need to engage with that process.
Perhaps
the consultation has to happen as part of the policy review.
Sorry to interject. Perhaps I can just give a bit of advice at this stage. My advice would be not to drop the recommendation at this point in time. And I appreciate that may be contentious, but I'll just explain my reasoning behind that. What I would propose is that you put something into the consultation document to suggest that based on the evidence that the committee has heard today and to date, it is strongly of a view that a certain approach should be taken, i.e. that this recommendation should ultimately be dropped, but that the consultation proceeds in the form that it's been published in. And I say that because it's been published and distributed, and there are parties that may, and we've certainly heard from Aquacars today that support the livery position. There may be parties out there that also support it. But if the recommendation is scrapped at this stage, then are effectively robbed of their opportunity to take a proper part in that consultation process. And I know that I am aware of correspondence that has been distributed. I've seen it because I've been asked to advise on it to parties to make it absolutely clear that this is just a consultation process, that today's meeting is just the start of that process. And I think this is not in any way going to hinder or bind or restrict the committee on the next occasion. It's still going to be free to drop that recommendation at that point in time, but what it will do is enable that committee to consider all of the relevant representations that might be submitted from all the parties properly at that stage. I hope that makes sense.
I'm all right with that because, as you can see, that the committee has pretty much noted that probably not going to be a policy change. So if
I would like to see the wording first before I vote on it.
Could you do me some wording, Ben?
I agree.
Absolutely.
I did have. I think I mean, Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. And I think this was just really as a comment which might help us going forward. Councillor Gerarda very eloquently put some very good points across when she spoke, as did some other colleagues, but specifically on one of the points that Councillor Gerarda said, which I completely agree with, which I think is something that perhaps the licensing department would be able to take away for consideration, is around the penalty system for those that are caught. because I completely share her views on what's detailed in the report. Doesn't look like it's really working, and it's not substantial enough to be a good deterrent. And perhaps as well, just through our friends in the room that are a part of the administration, there's been points raised about staffing and resources, and I know Nikki has made several points about, well, if you want me to focus on this, then I need to change the resource for that. That strikes me as being an opportunity for the administration, especially as the budget is coming up in the new year, both revenue and capital, to look to address the actual staffing needs of the licensing department with regards to the priorities that are put forward. So I think that probably we've sent quite a strong message today for the administration to consider that, and certainly there have been quite strong feelings here today, and I do think that if we want an effective department that works effectively, that supports the taxi trade, we probably need to be funding them correctly and staffing them to that tune.
I know that licensing is funded by the money that comes in from our fees, isn't it? We try and work at a zero-sum game as well. We try and stay just broken even at this point. So I guess that would be just clarifying that point at the moment. So if licensing have less money, they have to get rid of people.
But surely
if licensing have more money, they can
but surely it would be a political decision if the administration would like to provide additional funding to the licensing department to support them. I don't know, but I mean, that's certainly my view.
Mr. Bailey to maybe second some people. I don't know, really. I did have Councillor Weems written on my list before I chimed in after Councillor Gerard. Did you still want to say something?
No, I just basically agree with Councillor New and Councillor Gerard. There has to be an effective penalty system in place.
Yeah, I totally agree. If that changes, and that could be fought through the consultation process. And I know you're writing everything down, Reggie. You're going to have so much to do in the next few months. Councillor Brown, wait a minute, and then Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. I pretty much agree with what Ben said about not dropping the recommendations, but I was wondering, when we go out to consultation, would it be worth including a range of different options to get feedback on? So one option being permanent livery, one option being magnetic livery, or one option even being an option that they have, I think it's in Lichfield and Stoke-on-Trent councils, where they do have permanent livery as a requirement, but they also allow magnetic signs to go on top if you're taking a job with another operator. I'm not convinced that's the best option. I think the magnetic is probably the best one for driver flexibility, and that bringing in the stronger enforcements, as mentioned by other members, is vital. But I think if we're going to get honest feedback from people doing the consultations, laying out several different options, and even including have you got any other ideas of a system that could work for us? Getting a broad as possible spectrum of opinion on the consultation.
I would think that that's probably in line anyway, because we know the trade fairly well, that they would have certain opinions and people knowing about what different authorities do within. Quite a lot of the staff have been in licensing for quite a long time, haven't they, Nikki? So they're well aware of everywhere going on. But I think giving those options to people, like I said, I'll definitely be giving my personal opinion over, and I hope other people do too, to do with it that might not be specifically within the trade or whatever. Councillor Mason.
Thank you very much. Given that the previous meeting when we decided to allow magnetic, it was only one person opposed to it, and the rest of the committee were very much supportive, overly supportive, and everything we've heard today from taxi trade, where we've heard a lot of different contentions and concerns about it, and still it is pretty much the same today. I think we are the same ratio of people on the committee. I'm a little bit concerned that this report was written in such a way where it is trying to skew it in such a manner, and it could have been written a lot more neutral, or a lot more suggestive. These are different options. This does seem to be, this must be done. The word highlighted and in capitals, must. I'm hoping that we're dropping A, B and C of 38. It's not, whilst we've talked a lot about livery, I think also we can't really tie people in. They're not Premier League footballers where they're tied to one football team or they don't play football at all. I think they have got a right to work, and I don't, as being used as a referencing, you can't have someone who works for KFC then being told they can never work for McDonald's. It does seem a bit of a overkill, so I am disappointed in the way it's been written. I think it's caused a lot of concern for the trade, which was very needless, and we could have avoided this if it hadn't been brought here, and even if it just different options, but the way it's been done and brought forward, I'm very unhappy with it. So saying we want to leave it in because it gives all the options, it doesn't. It is very much typecast, leading, trying to railroad people into a certain way. So I'm disappointed in it, very disappointed in it, and I would support removing it with, but I understand this is a democracy, so if everyone else votes, they just want to have it amended.
I support what Lee Mason says. 100% support what Lee Mason says.
Thanks. Ben?
Apologies, I hadn't quite finished what I'd started, but I'll read what I've written thus far and see if the flow allows me to complete it. So what I've said is something that you could adopt by way of a resolution, is that the committee has heard several representations and views of councillors in regard to the recommendation on livery, number 38. On the basis of what it has heard, the committee is strongly of the view that this recommendation should not be implemented in the form set out. However, on the basis that the consultation document has been published and consultation not yet formally commenced, it is accepted that the recommendation not be formally dropped at this stage, and then perhaps that a range of options be consulted upon based upon those points that members have raised.
The stronger point system is the penalty system on a taxi licence has to be on there if keeping the policy in place.
What that does, it sets out the committee's position very clearly that if it were making the decision today, that is the decision that it would be making. It would be scrapping the recommendation 38. However, because the consultation has not yet commenced and there may be parties out there that would have otherwise, I know for a fact that correspondence has been sent out saying this is simply just the commencement of consultation. You will have your opportunity to make your say when the consultation process commences. And what it actually does is it secures the decision when it's ultimately made and makes it a much far safer one in the round. Simply for that reason.
Councillor Mason.
In the interest of being helpful, I might suggest that this could actually... In the interest of being helpful, I might suggest that this could actually go back to be completely rewritten, because it's a bit like if officers had gone out to consult on having double council tax without actually taking any political lead. Is this going to be a good idea? Do you think you'll vote for it if we do go with it? It's consulting on something that the committee didn't want, and the committee has actually voted against, so I'm still unhappy with it.
I would still like consultation on the matter. That's the point. That's the place where I'm at, because we want to consult and maybe change the policy in the way of having. Because I don't want to just. We can't just decide here and there and put a points policy in place, because that would involve.
That's what I'm saying. We're going to have to consult on that.
I think it's also worth stressing that this is a consultation process. So, if whatever is actually published, my wording, the consultation document is published, there is going to be a period where members and trade reps and every interested party can make a representation. So if there are alternative options that people want to suggest at that stage.
It could have been, or we can have a tougher approach, or we can have this. And we talk about the funding. If we have taxi drivers vote with their feet and register elsewhere, which they're more than legally allowed to do because cross-border hirings, we could actually end up with a situation where we don't even have the money to pay one officer if they all leave. So I am concerned, and I think this does need to be changed. If it's going out to consultation, saying, we need to consult, do we have a tougher point system? Well, that should have been written in, this is an option we could go with. So you're even saying now that this is not fit for purpose, because it doesn't mention about a tougher point system in here.
People have suggested a tougher point system, like I've suggested I would like fixed livery at the back and magnetic at the front, for instance. That's my contribution to the debate. Councillor Pitt-Harris.
I think it's safe to say, and I looked around to all the members, that I'd probably say no one is happy with this recommendation that's before us. And if any member is happy, please tell me that I'm wrong. But The problem we have with it is this is going to go out to consultation. This hasn't actually gone to consultation yet, and it's down to this committee to send it to consultation. And it's clear from the evidence base that we have in front of us, there's a recommendation which isn't fit for purpose. Now, I have really serious concerns about sending out a consultation document with evidence that I don't think is right, and it's clear from the membership here today, they don't think it's right either. So while I get the wording and the recommendation that Ben is trying to put over, I actually feel that we would be doing a disservice to the trade and to the committee by sending this document out in the current form. And I think we have to change that today to do so, because we need to be making clear evidence-based decisions, and at the moment we aren't doing that if we're going to send it out with this wording.
So what do you suggest our recommendation is, Councillor Pater Harris?
I actually think it should come back, yeah. With
when next month?
It's in your gift chair when it comes back.
ASAP, please, Nikki.
It's in your gift chair when it comes back, because I would rather see the evidence and the correct evidence actually that we can have in front of us. And even if we have to go into a closed session, we'll have items on orange paper to actually understand the nature of what is going on, because at the moment we don't have that. And I have real concerns that if we are to move forward in the current manner, we are just going to upset a lot of people unnecessarily.
So, Councillor Pater Harris, you're asking to defer this item to the next meeting for more information?
Not defer the actual item, to actually reject the report. By that item of the report, shall I say.
Councillor Gerardo, do you agree with that? Reject the report?
I second that, to bring it back to another committee meeting with the feedback taken on board.
I would say that's deferring with more information rather than rejecting it outright.
Either way, you can ask it how, you can take it how it is.
We're rejecting the report as it is.
Yeah. Reject the report.
We are rejecting the report as it is. We want, with the
and
points
defer
that we
the
made.
item to the next available licensing meeting. I'm mindful of Christmas, but second week of January, or do you reckon that's not soon enough? It's too soon.
Can I just clarify, Chair, in terms of the rejecting the report, is that the report so far as it extends to the question of the livery, or is that in relation to the statutory standards that the committee have agreed that they have no concerns regarding, and that could go out to consultation?
I'm going to look for legal clarification, but I'm sure the document is the document.
I think it would be better to do it all at once, correctly, rather than doing it piecemeal.
Councillor Brown, because he's been very knowledgeable and looking up stuff, you're going to say something good right now, aren't you?
So I've got one question for clarification and then a suggestion. The question for clarification is, when the document goes out for consultation, is the entirety of the evidence based on the commentary in section 11 intending to go out with the consultation? No. Okay, so that's in a way a good thing. So it means that all of the evidence that other members are unhappy with won't necessarily be shown to the public. The other thing I was going to say as a recommendation was that we have a separate vote on section 11. I don't know if that's doable in the standing order.
If you're allowed to cut the report to...
That would mean we're doing two reports going out and two consultations.
Absolutely, and we would be effectively rewriting the report in this meeting, and we cannot do that.
Okay, that's fine. So we bring the recommendation would be to reject the report, to bring it back to the closest possible committee meeting with more evidence, specifically on section 11, before the whole document goes out to consultation.
And options.
And options, which we have given out today. So it's kind of having a consultation for the consultation.
Chair, could I just clarify, because members have succinctly stated in the meeting this evening that they are not happy with the evidence that they have received in terms of non-compliance. I'm concerned that if I were to write a report for January, that there would be no extra evidence that could assist the committee to the extent that you're requesting in terms of compliance.
Councillor Gerardo.
Thank you, Chair, but I thought you said there were confidential things that we needed a closed session on that regarding public safety. Is that not possible for
I
us
would
to do
need
that?
to consult with the Chief Constable in order to find out, and I cannot make a comment on that at the moment without getting their approval.
I just feel like because we don't have the evidence to sort of push forward with the consultation, I think that's the point that we're all making.
I think what I'm saying to you is that the evidence, if you are not satisfied with the evidence you've seen today in terms of the amount of drivers that are working around the town without the stickers on their vehicles or not having their plates, I can't add to that in the timescales that you're setting by January. I can, if you are happy for again, I don't know where we are with this, but certainly if we come back to a licensing committee in May, which could consider the DFT standards, then that would give a greater timescale to give you the evidence that you seem to wish to get from officers.
Nikki, can I go one better? Can we hear in March before Purdah, please? I want to be here. And I think I want some policy changes in before I go. That me and Councillor Peter Harris have been talking about.
I don't think we'll add that one to the agenda in March.
Yeah, so could we have it, when's Purdah, middle of March? End of March?
24th of March, I think.
We can still have alternatives and options for the report to go out to consultation.
Yeah, so
We'll see later.
I'd say our next meeting for consideration of the report again would be in March with other policy issues, and we're having the consultation before the consultation now, and everyone feeds in and engages with Nikki specifically about what they want, so the licensing department can come up with relevant things, present some evidence, and then it will go out to consultation from, if it's approved, from the March to for 3 months or whatever then. Is that, are we good? So the recommendation would be to reject and defer this report to the next licensing meeting, but for members to please engage with the licensing department over this.
I think we need to vote on it, Chair.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get recommendations so Ben can make something. I was like, Ben, could you do the decision, please? And he just reads it back out at us. I'm like, yeah, I'm happy for you to, obviously, if you two both want to propose in second, yeah. Ben, did you get it? I just think it saves so much unnecessary chatting between everyone, because we've pretty much kind of reached a consensus here, and we don't want to go home any later than 10 minutes time, I should imagine.
No, quite. I think it does seem a little bizarre that we're talking about commencing a consultation process which will enable, it's effectively a talking shop, everybody to raise their opinions and to come back, and then this is not a decision making today. So
but it's the fact that you put those it's either that or it commences with me wiping the recommendations in 38 completely.
No, Chair, I mean, I've made my point clear that I want the report to go back to another meeting with more evidence-based decision making. Councillor Gerrard has seconded it. I'd rather just go to the vote.
Then I'm happy to go to the vote, proposed by Scott Peter Harris and seconded by Charlotte Gerrard. Are those in favour? All right, that's unanimous. That ends. No, it doesn't, does it? It does. It does end state. Members, I would like to talk about something other than taxis at my next meeting. So if anyone has any policy that we'd like looking at, maybe we can have that too and have a wild discussion. I said that we'd bring back at the next available licensing meeting from full council talking about safety of people in nightclubs, for instance, and safety of women in the nighttime economy.
On that point, Chair, while we've actually got the officers here, Nikki can confirm that we have had dialogue regarding the spiking instances recently, and there will be some feedback and briefing going to members shortly.
Following the debrief, I've received a debrief from council. I'm working with public health, I'm working with the police, and I'm working with Bruce Marr in terms of fulfilling that action. So it's in hand.
Thank you. Happy Christmas, everyone. And I guess we'll see you in March, if not before.
Possibly.
That's all right.
Merry Christmas, Chair.
And thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to come here. Sorry.